So hello and welcome to today's sales enablement session. I'm very pleased to have today Lyle and the support team on the call to talk to us about GitLab.com subscriptions. And with that, I'd like to pass it over to Lyle.
Great, thanks, William. Tom, it sounds like you're unmuted and maybe in your car. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. I'm the support manager for America's West, but I used to be the support manager for GitLab.com. And on the call, we also have Cynthia, Jackie, and Amanda, who are the real experts. I just get to do the presentation. So if you've sold GitLab.com, you probably have figured out that it works a little bit different than self-managed, or maybe you haven't, which is all the more reason why we wanted to talk to you. So self-managed licenses, it's one license, users get it, everybody gets equal access to all the features. But GitLab.com subscriptions are a little bit different. They can get applied to any namespace on GitLab.com, and that can cause a lot of confusion. So that idea that you can apply a license to a personal namespace often gives people the misconception that if they apply the license to their namespace, they suddenly have amazing golden powers and can just gold everything everywhere. So I listed a few misconceptions on this page that I wanted to go over, and then talk a little bit about trials, some common issues that we see, how we can set up the customer for success, and then some of the big differences. So yeah, the first misconception that I wanted to talk about is customers often write in, they say, I bought gold, I'm in a gold group, why doesn't my profile say gold? And the reason is that namespace. And I'm going to keep on saying namespace again and again because this is really important. If you're in a gold group, you're still a free user. You can participate in any number of groups. You can be in free, bronze, silver, and you can still be a free user. Subscriptions apply to a namespace. Sorry, I'm going to open up my chat just so I can see. Yeah, so if you have a gold subscription, if you're participating in a gold subscription, your profile is not going to say gold. It's going to say free unless you apply something to your profile. Doesn't mean you don't have access to the features. The second misconception I already alluded to in my little introduction, subscriptions grant the Midas touch. So they don't. If you have gold on your user, you don't just automatically create gold groups. Subscriptions are scoped to the namespace. They can anybody in the namespace, anything in the namespace is going to get all the gold features. So if you apply a gold thing to your user, your projects will have gold features, and they'll pull from that gold pool of minutes. But nobody can really participate those in a meaningful way. So typically, we want to apply subscriptions to groups so that you can get those group level features, so that all of the projects and subgroups in that group are going to get those shared minutes. Another thing we see a lot is that people think a license key is going to get emailed out, and so then they're in our docs, and they're like, I can't get to the admin section. How do I apply a license key? Where's my license key? I don't understand. So subscriptions are managed and applied through customers.gitlab.com and a linked GitLab.com account. If they don't have a GitLab.com account, then they can't apply a subscription. If they don't ever get into customers, then they can't apply the subscription. They need both. Another misconception we see is that somebody in accounting wants to make the purchase, so they sign all the papers, they get the account on customers, they log in, they're like, okay, how do I apply this? So subscriptions have to be managed by a GitLab.com account for somebody who has owner in the group. So yeah, that is kind of annoying sometimes for larger customers. Another one is that people sometimes think they need to purchase their subscription first. And with the exception of SAML, where you actually have to have the silver features going, or silver plus going, it's a lot easier, I think, in most cases, to get people invited and get things set up before they actually purchase. It just makes it so that they can do web direct purchases. And then another question we get a lot is can you apply different levels to subgroups. And no, it's sort of like how self-managed is right now. You get one subscription type for the entirety of your group. And then one last misconception is just that personal runners, if you set up your own runners, those don't pull from your GitLab.com shared minutes. So that's nice. Trials in general is something that we see a lot as well. So trials, we really prefer if users initiate their own trials. We'll get requests occasionally for people to have trials initiated, like on the behalf of the support team, but we will almost always kick that back and say, please have them go to the setting page of the group where they want the trial on and initiate it themselves. That just makes things a lot easier. It gets them into customers.gitlab.com. It makes sure that the group is set up in the way that they want it, and they can already see the count of users in the group. It smooths things over a lot. As of today, silver and bronze trials aren't generally available. We can manually downgrade them. And also, as of writing, trials have to be manually downgraded before a purchase can be made. I know this is a pain. We would like this not to be the case. Yeah, fulfillment team is working on that. I also wanted to note that support is not included with trials. There's an issue that I've linked here. So if you have a big potential, we can help them out in some circumstances. But if we just have, Joe Random who makes a gold trial, like we can't just support everyone who makes a gold trial. It's too easy, right? I've been talking a lot. Is there any questions up to this point, or do we want to save all questions until the end?
You can go either way. Might be good to just kind of cover the content. That way anybody watching on YouTube can kind of consume it and then do the Q&A in one slot.
Great. I just don't want to be too boring. I'm afraid people are going to fall asleep. Does anybody else from the support team want to jump in and have anything they want to say, or nope? Okay. I'm just going to keep on going through. Common issues that we have with sales-assisted purchases on the .com side is with new customers, sometimes we get tickets in Zendesk from sales-assisted clients with questions like, how do I set up a group? How do I add additional users? Why are subscriptions applied to groups instead of users? Like, how are permissions handled? A lot of times we're going to direct them right to the documentation to answer their questions. But I think there's some things on the sales side that we could do to help clear those things up before they even get to us. A lot of times customers aren't even aware that creating an account in the customer portal doesn't create an account on GitLab.com, or how to link their portal and .com account. There is a big button that says link, but you do have to have both, right? And then another common thing we see is sort of the upgrades and downgrades. Right now, there's not a self-service way for customers to upgrade or downgrade their subscriptions. So it has to go through the sales team queue and Zendesk, which can cause some delays. Like, we're working on that process, but still it takes time. So setting up the customer for success, I'm just going to read this verbatim because I think it's really well put. Best way to assist a user or system admin on any new platform is to arm them with the resources they'll need when questions arise. During the onboarding process after the sale, the user or admin will receive an email from GitLab with the information about their subscription. Highlight this and encourage them to save it somewhere. Many of the links below are included in the email, but I think it would be good to review each of the following personally with them. So just getting to the right documentation, especially the subscription setup and management and the licensing and subscription FAQ. Yeah. And then, sorry, on this page, yeah, if you have any questions, hit us up in Slack, support_GitLab_com or self-managed. This one I think is really key. Be sure to stress to your folks to submit their support issues directly instead of using you as a go-between. This is going to make things easier for us because we'll be communicating directly. Make that easier for you because you will not have to be the go-between. Yeah, I think that really will help. And then if you do need to submit something on behalf of someone, do it on .com internal and not via the support portal. You won't get associated with the correct org. The ticket won't go towards their org. It makes things difficult. We really want to keep Zendesk stuff in Zendesk and internal GitLab stuff in our trackers. And then we've covered this already, but it is really important for sales assisted stuff that the user understands that GitLab, they need to have a GitLab.com account and they need to have a customer's account. And in order to get the subscription, they have to use them together. Last section is just sort of some important differences that we wanted to highlight. There is a section in the FAQ about which features don't apply, but the highlights are, yeah. So SAML and LDAP is core, but SAML SSO is silver. So that is important. LDAP isn't on .com yet. That is important. The concept of sort of the user being the admin is something that comes up a lot with our enterprise customers. So typically in a SaaS product like your G Suite, you are the total owner of all of the users in your group, right? So if you need to reset somebody's password, reset their 2FA, you can do that. You don't have that much power on GitLab.com. And so you're not an admin on GitLab.com. You're not an admin really even in your group. And every individual in your group is in essence signing a contract with GitLab and not with you. So that means that we have to treat them as individuals. And so just because, Big Corp wants us to reset the 2FA on one of the people in their group, we can't do that because that person has a contract directly with GitLab and we have to protect their personally identifiable information. And so we have to run them through our 2FA procedures. This is annoying. So it's best if people keep their codes, register SSH keys and stuff like that. There's also kind of a question of logging. So logs also are not really generally available. We can get some logs, but they're not going to have just full access to the logs at request. All of these requests have to go through security. Also slightly annoying. Yeah, and things like backups and sort of like all of the data warehousing backups and all of the other kind of infrastructure stuff, like all of that, again, since we manage it, we can't make any guarantees that the data is going to be kept only in Europe. It's probably actually going to be in the US. We don't have sort of a backup strategy for their individual group. So there's not a simple make a backup for my group kind of thing. So there's all of these sort of small things. GitLab.com does work really well, but there are these important differences. I think that's my main spiel. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let's take a look at the questions in the chat. Probably I'm going to invite you to verbalize them if you don't mind. I think the first one looks like it's from Joe. Would you like to verbalize your question? If not, that's okay. Joe asks, what is a namespace? A namespace is a username or group. So if you go to gitlab.com/something, that something could be, like Jay Miklos, which would be your user, or it could be /bigcorp, which could be a group. And so anything that is after the slash, that's a namespace. So it could be a user or a group. And then, as you know, after sort of that top level namespace, you could have either subgroups or projects. And so we say that the things after that first name, those are inside of the namespace.
And there's I'll just show that there's a link to the docs in the chat, and I've also created an MR to link that from the page that Lyle's been presenting. So on the YouTube video, we'll link all this page that Kyle's been sharing. That will be linked on the YouTube video. And then from that page, I've also provided a link to the docs. Amanda.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to Lyle's last point on namespaces. We get a lot of questions from sales about whether a namespace is available for their prospect. It's something that they ask ahead of time before the sale because they want to use it, especially the big enterprises. In support, we can let you know if it's available per our dormant user policy, but we can't give you information about who may own it. So a lot of times we'll get a question like, can you tell us who currently owns this particular namespace so we can reach out to them and ask if my prospect can use it? The answer is always going to be no, but we will tell you if it is eligible. And if it is eligible, we're going to instruct you to ask the prospect to send in a support request so we can go ahead and process that request.
Great. Thank you, Amanda. David, you had a kind of a question and note.
Yeah, thank you. Some of this may just be my not understanding, right? But at the start of it, it was you're describing, hey, some common misperceptions or misconceptions. Some of it just seemed like, hey, the customer wants to be able to do this, but that's because they don't know how to navigate our system because it's this way. So I don't mean to come across it right as critical. Just trying to understand, are we thinking about like understanding how the customer wants to interact with us, and are there changes that we can make on our side to make it easier for them to engage with their subscription?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're not going to get any harsher critic of a product than support. So don't worry about that. Yes, I think that the fulfillment group is still kind of spinning up. The focus of theirs is making sure that subscriptions are easier to manage, that things go more smoothly. There are some larger things, though, sort of in the way that GitLab.com is set up. So GitLab wasn't originally designed to be a large-scale SaaS product. It was designed to be a self-managed kind of thing. And so there are some things that sort of break down in that mindset. And so, yes, I think that there is will to make these changes, to make it easier for customers and for things to move in a direction that makes sort of more sense as a SaaS product. But I think that those changes are on the further horizon. So both yes and no. I think there's some low-hanging fruit that we can do that is in the short term that's going to make a lot of things go away. But sort of the larger paradigm, I think is going to take a lot longer.
Got it. I appreciate that. Thank you, Lau.
I'll just add that I added a couple links to the chat that Fulfillment has a number of epics to generally improve the user kind of flow or journey in purchasing. The UX team member that's working with Fulfillment has kind of mapped out at least what is the current state of things. And then, the team is looking at how do we get to a more ideal kind of state of where we want to be in terms of, like, they know that we have a lot of pain points and our users have a lot of pain points. The last one I linked to especially might be interesting, and one of the epics that they have is about making the portal, like, quote unquote invisible, so that the user could do the purchasing directly from GitLab.com. It would automatically kind of provision an account on the customer portal, so to speak. So it would still, our system would still interact with the customer's portal, but the customer themselves would not have to go through the portal. They would just do everything from GitLab.com. We're not there yet, but the team, the fulfillment team, is working on it.
Thanks, Cynthia. Bill had a question about internal GitLab support, whether it's a Slack channel or something. It's actually an issue tracker that we have set up. It's been linked in the chat, and there should be links on the page directly to internal support page that has a lot of links to issue templates that will help kind of smooth these requests. But if you ever have any question about where to go, if you poke into the support GitLab.com channel, we will happily link you, and we liberally link to these things. David, you had another question. Would you like to verbalize that one about customers having two accounts?
Yeah, I didn't quite follow. Why is that? Do they have to have two different accounts?
Yeah, so The reason is again, sort of, it goes back to sort of the origins of GitLab. GitLab was designed as a self-managed kind of product. And so we didn't build things in like credit card processing or account management. So we have this separate thing, customers.gitlab.com, which is a wholly separate app that manages subscriptions and lets you, put your credit card details in and generate invoices and do all of those things. And so we rely on that to actually manage the subscriptions and purchases. And then we link back to gitlab.com to actually apply those subscriptions. But like Cynthia was saying, there is that epic to make it invisible. And at some point, it won't disappear, but it won't be quite so obvious and so much of a pain point. Ugo, you had a question?
Yeah, so I had a recent experience. Shortly after joined, a customer, went to customers portal, purchase a license, right? And it's coming back to me and saying, "Wait a minute, I got a license, but it says that I'm the free tier still, right?" Lo and behold, the customer is going to the user profile, going to settings, and providing us that screenshot that says that the customer is in free tier. Well, then we need to guide them. Okay, yes, okay, you need to link the group. After you link the group, you go to the group billing section information and check that you have actually the tier that you have purchased, right? I think it's very confusing for customers, right? Like they just don't get it. And I think would perhaps a low-hanging fruit, maybe for fulfillment, I don't know, and it's just to put on the user profile, say, hey, yeah, you have a free tier, but you belong to these groups that had those tiers or something, right? Like to make that experience more seamless. And maybe that's on the epics that Cynthia was mentioning. I haven't gone through those yet. Do you have an experience? Is support shared that experience?
Oh yes.
Okay.
We've seen that. I think I led off today with that example. Yes, we have that all the time, both internal to GitLab and with customers. The way that GitLab.com subscriptions work is confusing.
Okay, thank you.
Cynthia, do you know if we have an issue about exposing group information on a user's billing page? I know I've brought this up before, but I don't know if it got turned into an issue.
I remember seeing there have been a number of proposed redesigns, and I don't know that there is one specifically around exposing this on the user page. Like if you're on your user page to expose what licenses might be applied to your groups. I do know that they are looking at like as a kind of first step to redesign the customer portal itself, so it's a little more clear which namespace you've applied a license to, because of course one of the most common errors we have and see is that a user or a customer has purchased a subscription, but they've applied it to their own namespace, like their user namespace, rather than the group namespace. So that's kind of the low-hanging fruit that they're starting with, is redesigning just the look of the customer's portal, so that's much more obvious which namespace it's being applied to. And so I'm not sure we have one specifically on the billing.
There is.
Page.
I'm just going to jump in. I don't have the issue in front of me, but I'll link it somewhere once I get it. But one of the things they're looking to change on the personal user's profile page is to show what the personal account subscribes to, but then beneath that also any related groups as an owner and what those packages are. So I think that that's going to help a lot as well.
Great. Thank you both. Are there any other questions?
I have a question. I can't, can only just verbalize it. I'm in the car. Is there a desire to move the code base to more of a multi-tenant with subscriptions kind of built in? I know we use it, and it's probably not a huge use case, but I could see where customers may want to, manage internal subscriptions, chargebacks, et track kind of internal usage where their shared services team might be acting kind of like a service provider, like we do for GitLab.com. So to make that self-managed, and and then shore the holes in the .com, what we have in .com as well with third-party packages. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Let me rephrase, and you can correct me. You're asking, is there any will in product to add sort of the ability to run your own GitLab.com, maybe just personally, like within your own organization, but adding some of those features to make it more like a SaaS product, both for self-managed, which would in turn help .com.
Yes.
Okay. I'm unaware of any sort of large-scale initiative of that type, but if anybody knows, I would love to hear about it. I certainly have will. This is something that I would very much like to see. I think it would benefit our self-managed customers a lot, and it would make life on the .com side a lot easier.
How would it make life on the .com side a lot easier?
On the .com side, we would, I think if we approached GitLab self-managed as a SaaS product, then we would get things like user authentication. Like right now, in order to authenticate that a user is allowed to make any change, like that we're allowed to make any changes for a user, like on behalf of a user, we have to go through a fairly complicated process. So like resetting two-factor authentication, we need to, verify like all these different facts about them. Whereas if we approached it more as a self-managed, as a SaaS product, I think that we could build things that would make a lot of those processes easier. Like even something simple like having a support pin. If like on your G Suite, if you as an admin want Google to make changes, you generate a little support pin, and then Google knows that it's actually you, and they can make changes without running you through a bunch of stuff. So I think that it would probably actually benefit .com more, and self-managed would kind of get it for free.
Interesting, yeah, because I mean, going with what Brad was saying, I think multi-tenancy self-hosted, where you can have multiple licenses on the same server, is a huge request from everybody in sales. So
it is, but it also goes beyond that. Just different business units. I know, John, you work with very large enterprises that act like probably 10 or 20 or 50 different organizations under the same umbrella, right? And shared services teams typically are like, they're basically like what we do for .com, and they have chargeback methodologies, and they have onboarding, and they want to distribute permissions, down and say, okay, this group, you're self-managing only your group, right? But at the the top level management, it's managed centrally or hosted centrally, just like GitLab.com is.
yeah, you're exactly. It's probably out of scope of this discussion, but you're absolutely right in that. The chargeback model and having different one org might want ultimate, but another org only wants starter. Yeah, you're exactly right. But I think that might be out of scope of this discussion.
It is. I just, yeah, gotcha.
Well, yeah, you and I are completely on board together on that.
I agree. Thanks.
Getting near the bottom of the hour. Is there any last questions? Okay. If not, then I'm going to pass back to William.
Yeah, no, just thanks, Lyle and team, for joining us. I personally think these discussions are always great, and I know that everyone on the call is also really good about logging issues, commenting issues, definitely for that product feedback cycle. And this was great. Thank you for all the wonderful info, and we'll catch up with you all next time. Cheers.